I'm told that from the Roy Ellison perspective, he jumped into the middle of a lot of N-word back and forth that had been going on all game long between the Redskins and the Eagles, black to black, and some black to white, white to black. And he had heard enough of it, Roy Ellison, and was saying, cut it out, I want to hear it anymore. And at that point, Trent Williams, who has vehemently denied that he said this, for the record, but according to Ellison's side and the other officials within earshot, that Trent Williams used the N-word in the context that Roy Ellison was selling out, to put it nicely. And even though Trent Williams doesn't have the best reputation around the league, this sent Roy Ellison over the edge. And he said some things that he should be ashamed of, and he lost his cool. He's had a couple of episodes before of losing his cool on the field, sort of anger management issues, and clearly he should have just thrown the flag and maybe suggested he might just throw Trent Williams out of the game. Instead, he went over the line, went over the edge, and said those things to Trent Williams.
The discussion inside of the black community, I don't think that it recognizes enough how much that conversation, all it does is spill out into culture and the rest of culture, whether it's music, whether it's little kids, with all this talk about, we're using it as a term of endearment, we're robbing it of its power. We just keep it around. We keep it around. And the truth is, Stephen A., and you know this, it's not true that it's only used as a term of endearment within the black community. And that's a real problem, because if you're not black enough, you get called the house N-word, okay? But I hear it too many times when we're talking about, whether you're talking about criminals, where you're talking about, well, those are some real, and I'm just tired of it. And this is what happens. This is what has happened with this word. And I agree with, the word has to go. That, should it come from the outside, from white people telling black people that they have to stop using it? No. But we need to take responsibility for that ourselves. It's an ugly, ugly word. And the more we use it, the more we keep it around. We're addicted to it in music, we're addicted to it in movies, and the more we keep it around, the more people are going to implicitly think, okay, well, they kind of accept it, so it's okay to, I'm just tired of it. And this is another example of it happening on the field in the ugliest sense possible.
Stephen A.
Let me tell you something, Robert. Nobody is disagreeing with a word that you just said. But just because we're uncomfortable with the point that I brought up doesn't mean that it lacks any veracity whatsoever. I have specifically said that everybody is right when you talk about eradicating the word. I have specifically said that it is a conversation that needed to be had in our community. I have specifically said that I do not disagree with Mr. John Wooten. I do not disagree with the Fritz Pollard Alliance. I specifically said all of that. But evidently, what's really making everybody uncomfortable is the fact that what I'm really pointing to is that's a conversation for us to have. You want to sit here as a corporation. I work for ESPN. ESPN has every right to sit there and say, don't you say that word on our network. Any employer has a right to say, don't you say that word in our place of employment. Anybody, FCC, has a right to sit there and mandate that word, considering its nefarious and wicked history, you have a right to sit there and mandate that this is not something that should happen. And if it does happen, there's some kind of ramification or repercussion that's going to come down. I have no problem with that whatsoever. What I'm saying is, obviously, when we think about nefariousness and we think about wickedness, we have to think about American history. And when you think about American history and you think about the N-word, I'm sorry, who employed the nefarious and wicked tendencies associated with that word? We have to think about that. And in light of the fact that it's some folks, because I certainly don't say all of white America. Remember, my grandmama's white, and it was never that way with her. But you do have a segment of our population historically that has something to do with employing that nefarious and wicked tendency associated with that word, meaning the actions that followed it, the hanging, the maiming, the murders, etc. That wasn't black people that did it to themselves. It was somebody else. Now, that somebody else, all right, or their brethren, will now come before us and say, even privately amongst yourselves, what you shouldn't do. You know as well as I do, Robert, that as right as they may be, we don't want to hear it from them.
Right.
Why would we want to hear it from them? Because if anything, if you know anything about American history, what's going to happen is you're going to find people who are more defiant, because the people who were the villains in all of this are the ones that have the audacity, the unmitigated gall to step before you and tell you how you're supposed to act based on the history they created. This is what's going on here. That's a different subject than Mr. Wooten is addressing. It's a different subject that Harry Carson and the Fritz Pollard Alliance is addressing. It's a different subject than even you're addressing, because, Robert, I think you're brilliant. I think you're smart. I think you're conscientious. Damn it, I think you're a good man. I'm honored to be working with you, my man. And I love the friendship that we're developing, because I respect and admire the living hell out of you. I can't even say that enough. I mean it from my heart. You're not wrong about anything that you're saying, but let's make sure that we're real here. What you're talking is about a subject matter that needs to be addressed amongst ourselves.
Right.
I am speaking of people outside of our community that think that, oh, historically, this has been inflicted upon us, and now the perpetrators are going to sit before us and tell us how we're supposed to act amongst ourselves privately? Really? You got to, I'm just saying, even if they're right, the nerve